Hello, and welcome to the Cycle of Care podcast. I'm your host, Mona Zignago. It's the beginning of the year. This is often the time when we set our intentions for the coming year. Intentions are set, goals are created, some of them are achieved. But what actually goes into setting a goal that's attainable, authentic, and actually able to be achieved? And how do we know what types of goals are actually meaningful and aligned with who we are and the strengths we have? In this episode, we're exploring an element positioned within the cycle of care, setting authentic goals. As always, this podcast will have several parts. The first will be content about authentic goals. The second is a reflection activity to help discern an authentic goal. The third is a summary of our time together today with some parting words for you. We live in a culture that tends to value overwork, perfection, and image. Often, goals become checklists to satisfy others or prove our value, especially for those of us that struggle with codependency or perfectionism. But what if we redefine goals as acts of care for ourselves and others? What if our goals weren't about achievement, appearance, being liked, or what other people want, but rather about alignment with who we are, what our strengths are, where our passions lie, and what we value? Today, we explore how the most meaningful goals come from a solid relationship with ourselves, listening to ourselves to hear what matters, thinking with awareness and clarity, and responding with action. The 4 elements of the cycle of care of relationships, listening, thinking, and responding. Achieving an awakened awareness of what our vision and our purpose for our life is helps us to have a more overarching, global view of our life versus a narrowed, limited focus. As Liza Miller puts it in her book, The Awakened Brain, we become seekers of our path and wonder, what is life showing me now? When we do this, we are more connected to ourselves and to others, and we are more able to understand the relationship between the events in our lives and live more in sync with our life's purpose and meaning. These elements help us to discern goals that are authentic to who we are and what we are passionate about. Goals can be misunderstood, such as sometimes people think goals are about toughness. The tougher we are, the better we'll perform. I've heard this in action when people have said things to me like, I'm only hard on you because I care and because I know you can do it. In my book, Transforming Teaching Through the Cycle of Care, I push back on this type of thinking as actually being profoundly uncaring and unhelpful in achieving our goals. Not only are these types of statements the opposite of care, but this type of toughness is outdated and unsupported by research. These types of statements are not caring at all and do not help us meet our goals and aspirations. When people say things like, I'm only hard on you because I care and I know you can do it, or I'm only doing this for your own good, or I'm tough on you now, but you'll thank me for this later, they're holding down a top-down hierarchy that is not only not caring, but also not supported by research as to what really works to help people reach their goals. They're also gaslighting you, but that's a subject for another podcast. These types of statements that are made in the name of toughness rationalize the absurd. This is a quote from the author Steve Magness, who in his book, Do Hard Things, offers a different way. He feels that for far too long, we have defined toughness as the belief that we have to have tough skin, fear nothing, keep our emotions in check, and destroy any vulnerability we have. He proposes 4 pillars of real toughness that resonate far more deeply with authentic care. These pillars not only dismantle negative performative pressure, but provide a new framework for how we set goals that align with our values instead of appeasing the harsh external judgment of others. That's not what we're here for. So, for example, suppose you're a teacher setting a goal to increase test scores. If that goal is purely to satisfy district mandates or avoid scrutiny, it may lead to anxiety or resentment. But if you set that same goal because you deeply believe in educational equity and want your students to thrive, then that goal is aligned with your values. The outcome may look the same, but the motivation and how you live out the achieving of this goal every day is completely different. Steve Magness dismantles this outdated idea that toughness means pushing through no matter what, and instead encourages us to redefine toughness through movement away from these outdated, aggressive, fear-driven practices. In his book, he outlines 4 pillars of real toughness that directly relate to how we set caring, authentic goals aligned to who we are and what we value. The first is ditch the facade. Magnus emphasizes that performative goals that are designed to impress, lead to burnout. Authentic goals start with honesty. Second, listen to your body. Real feedback comes from listening to yourself, paying attention, understanding your emotions, and learning from them so you can take thoughtful, meaningful action. Respond, don't react. Number 3, authentic goal setting means we pause and respond with intentionality, not panic or pressure. And 4, transcending discomfort. Discomfort is not a sign to quit. It's a signal that growth can happen if we are open to navigating the discomfort to make the best decision that we can. These ideas from Steve Magnus help us to step away from performative goal culture, where we set goals for ourselves based on fear or old, outdated toughness principles, and move toward goals that are rooted in care and our values, not outside pressure. Now, research supports this shift. Studies show that when people set intrinsic goals, those based on internal values like an appreciation for learning, relationships, and caring practices, they experience greater well-being, resilience, and long-term success than those who pursue extrinsic goals like status or appearance. Authentic goals don't rely on external disconnected factors. They rely on alignment. When we set goals based on who we are and what we care about, we're less likely to abandon them when things get hard. Because the point isn't to prove something. The point is to do something that brings care into the world, something amazing, something that aligns with who we are and what we value, something that fills us with an urgency and a fire that gets us up every morning. As most of you know, I'm a chief schools officer for a network of urban schools. In this role, I oversee academics. Recently, I've made time in my schedule to meet with students to tutor them in literacy. This work sets me on fire. I can't wait to get up and get out into the schools. I thrive on connecting with teachers, leaders, and now students. Find your passion. Find your why. Find out what gets you up in the morning. This is your life, not someone else's. Your goals have to reflect who you are and what inspires you. Authenticity matters because misaligned goals cost us more than we realize. When we pursue goals that aren't really ours, goals that are rooted in fear or comparison, hierarchy, or the need to prove something, we might achieve them, but we might feel strangely empty afterwards. That emptiness is a signal. It's our inner self saying this wasn't aligned. Sometimes I have that feeling also when I know it's time for me to move on or take on something new. I was recently asked to teach a course at a university. Teaching college courses is something I actually really enjoy, and I hadn't realized how much I missed it until I was reading over the syllabus as I considered whether or not I would take this on. My main goal that drives my decisions is that every student becomes a skilled reader, period. No distractions, no complications. Literacy is a civil right, and every student deserves to learn to read proficiently and deserves the opportunity to be taught by a skilled teacher. So teaching at the university level part-time scratches an itch for me. It aligns with my goal. So I said yes. When our goals are fueled by something passionate inside of us, we feel boundless energy and motivation, and we're more focused. In fact, research in self-determination theory tells us that when our goals are driven by intrinsic motivation, such as growth, connection, or contribution, we experience greater psychological well-being and persistence. But when our goals are driven by external validation, such as status, image, or approval, we're actually more prone to anxiety, burnout, and disengagement. And here's what's even more important. Misaligned goals fracture our relationship with ourselves. If the cycle of care begins with relationships, then the first relationship we've got to tend to is the one within us. When we consistently override our own values to satisfy outside expectations, we actually erode trust with ourselves. Over time, that erosion makes it harder to hear our internal voice at all. Authentic goals rebuild that trust. They say, I know who I am, I know what matters to me, and I'm willing to pursue it even if it doesn't impress everyone. Because this isn't about everyone. This is about my purpose and my reason for being here. And that is the essence of authentic goal setting. So, let's dig into our reflection activity for today called the Alignment Audit. This activity is designed to help you check whether your goals are truly yours or whether they're driven by someone else's idea of success. So breathe. Get ready to be honest with yourself. Get in touch with who you are at your core. Think about who you are and what you value. Bring to mind one goal you're currently pursuing. Think about the what and the how of this goal. And ask yourself, what is my goal? What value does this goal reflect? How does pursuing this goal make me feel? For example, does it make me feel energized, anxious, numb? So, for example, if I'm asking myself these questions, What is my goal? My goal is to devote my career to bringing care into education and ensuring every child learns to read. What value does this goal reflect? Well, my deep respect and esteem and value for education. My belief that literacy is a civil right. And then, how does pursuing this goal make me feel? Well, as I said before, it makes me feel energized, excited, and ready to jump out of bed every single morning. My mission is to build a career centered on care and education and to relentlessly pursue a world where every child can read. My mission is to build a career centered on care and education and to relentlessly pursue a world where every child can read. I have an unwavering commitment to education and my belief that literacy is a fundamental civil right. So this goal aligns with who I am and what I'm doing every day. And when I hit roadblocks, this goal is my North Star that keeps me focused and moving forward. If your answers align with your internal compass, you're on the right track. If not, it's not failure to recalibrate. It's knowledge, it's awareness, and thus ultimately wisdom. So again, the reflection activity for today. Think about the what and how. Think of one goal you're currently pursuing. Ask yourself, what value does this goal reflect? Ask yourself, how does pursuing this goal make me feel? Now pause for a moment. If you felt tension while answering those questions, that's not a problem. That's actually valuable information. Discomfort doesn't mean you're off track necessarily. Sometimes it means you're uncovering something that you've ignored for a hot minute. If you realized a goal isn't aligned, that doesn't mean you failed. It means you're awake and aware. Alignment is not about shrinking your ambition or pushing it off to the side. It's about clarifying it. It's not about lowering standards. It's about raising integrity. Sometimes authentic goals are actually quieter than performative ones. They don't look flashy. They don't always get applause, but they're sustainable. They energize rather than deplete. They strengthen your relationship with yourself rather than fracture it. I worked with 12 students this week to help them build foundational reading skills. Their ages range from 2nd grade to 6th grade. That work set me on fire, filled my cup, and had me practically jumping out of bed each morning, and I am not a morning person. What is your passion? What is your mission and vision? What goals are you pursuing? Because here's the truth. You're allowed to change your goals. You're allowed to release goals that were born out of fear or what you thought you were supposed to do, not what you're actually here to do. You are allowed to leave behind things that no longer fit your mission, vision, and values, and that's not weakness. That's wisdom. And wisdom is one of the strongest forms of toughness there is. So, in closing, setting goals doesn't have to be based on what someone in your life wants you to do. Let your goals be a practice of awakened alignment, a focused, aligned conversation between your values and your actions. A cycle of care rhythm of relationships, listening, thinking, and responding. And remember, you don't have to do hard things to prove you're tough. You can do aligned things that align with your values because you care. Setting authentic goals is not about shrinking your ambition or what others want to hear. It's about aligning with who you are and what you value. It's about moving from goals that prove something to others to goals that mean something to you. So from goals that perform to goals that align, from goals rooted in fear to goals rooted in care. And when we approach authentic goal setting through the cycle of care, we begin with the most important relationship, the one we have with ourselves. We listen honestly, we think clearly, we respond intentionally, and then we move forward with courage. Not the loud, aggressive kind of courage, but the steady, values-anchored kind of courage. The kind that doesn't need applause, it doesn't collapse when approval disappears, the kind that can withstand discomfort because it knows why it's moving in the first place and where it's going. Steve Magnus reminds us that real toughness isn't about shutting down emotion or grinding ourselves into the ground. It's about awareness. It's about flexibility. It's about responding thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. And when we set goals from that place, from clarity, instead of comparing, something shifts. Our goals become authentic. We stop chasing someone else's version of what success looks like. We stop performing or trying to please others. We start building a life that is aligned along with our mission and vision that brings care and goodness into our world, one step at a time, one goal at a time. So, as you continue into this year, as you consider the goals on your list, pause. When reflecting on your goals, see if you're aligned with your mission and vision by asking yourself what and how. What is my goal? What value does this goal reflect? How does pursuing this goal make me feel? Because when your goals are aligned, you don't have to force motivation. Energy follows this alignment. Clarity fuels persistence, and care sustains the journey. You don't have to do hard things to prove you're worthy. You already are worthy. You already have value. What you can do is set goals aligned with who you are and what you value. And you can get crystal clear and hyper-focused about what those goals are and how that impacts your everyday life from this day forward. That is true strength. That is the cycle of care in action. As we close out today's episode, I want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up, for listening, for caring, for choosing to make space for reflection, care, and growth in a world that too often measures us by external factors rather than what we are passionate about. Let's join together in this community and turn the tide. Let's bring more care into the world together. If this message resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And whether you've been here from the beginning or this is your first episode, thank you. This community matters. You matter. You can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, or at my website, monazignego.com. And you can learn even more about care, reflection, and transformative teaching in my book, Transforming Teaching Through the Cycle of Care. Thanks again for listening. I'm Mona Zignego, and this is the Cycle of Care podcast. Until next time, move forward and commit to care. You've got this. Take care. This podcast and all episodes within the Cycle of Care series is intended for educational and reflective purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional mental health care, therapy, or counseling. If you are experiencing emotional distress or need support, please seek guidance from a licensed mental health professional.